Welcome to That Could Have Been an Email. I'm Leslie Bailey.
And I'm Ron Shaw.
And we started this podcast to discuss the good, bad, and ugly of project managing, bring humor to our everyday project management and client situations, and a place to commiserate on all those things that our partners, friends who aren't in the industry never understand. Hi, everybody. Welcome to That Could Have Been an Email. I'm Leslie Bailey. Along with me always is Ron Shaw. And Ron, we are at the end of the year.
I know, another year gone. It's amazing how fast they just seem to go, and sometimes a little scary how
I
fast they seem to
know.
go.
I know. It goes so quickly because I always think, and maybe everybody's else has been in this mind frame too, is I always think last year was COVID. Last year was not COVID. It was 2 years ago. And I
Almost
just can
three.
never get my time right. Yeah. And it's insane. It goes so fast. And I feel like there's been so many events and different ideas that you've heard about this year. And we went in today to talk about end of year wrap up, but also maybe we should call it like a Festivus because we're going to go through things that we think we should get rid of or update. And at times it may sound like we're annoyed by it, which we are. I'm sure other people are too, but just thinking about things that are going on in the future, I think it's always going to come up of things kind of like a New Year's resolution that you want to get rid of and you never want to see again. So that's what we're doing today. Kind of everybody can send us their ideas too, or things that you want to get rid of in 2023, because I'm sure there are a lot of them. But let's start with vocabulary. I love this because it seems like this question comes up a lot and I still see it a ton. And everybody can rake me over the coals if they don't agree with me. That's fine. But let's start with the word pivot. Pivot. I'm going to sound like Ross from Friends, which my pop culture moment of this episode is pivot. You know what, this word worked for me for maybe a couple months into COVID, but now it doesn't. And I'll tell you the reason why it doesn't work for me, and you can tell me if you agree or what your thoughts on it are. It doesn't work for me because I don't like the idea that digital was so new to people just because COVID came around, which I don't like the idea that we should be using digital or different experiences per audience just because this virus was there. You should be using them anyways to appease all of your audiences and give them these different experiences and meet them halfway of how they want to experience your brand, your event. So pivot didn't work for me as long as it went on, which I'm sure some people are still using it. I still see it on LinkedIn and in some articles. It just, to me, I don't like the fact that it took something like that for people to finally incorporate a digital or a different element for their audiences. So Ron, what do you think about pivot?
Cringeworthy. Just the word itself, there definitely was a need for a shift from where people were with mainly physical. There were people prior to the pandemic that were engaged in digital or online extensions experiences as part of their event structure. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a change pivot for everybody. It was, some people were already there. I just, mm-hmm. For me, the word just got overused. It became one of those 5-minute things that it really should have lasted 5 minutes and it went on for 2-3 years, which mm-hmm. That's just, it's lost the kind of oomph that it had. Initially, the impact was great. It rose a point of, yes, we all have to rethink and restructure how we're running the events businesses at those times, but its time was over. And now, as we see, things are shifting back. It was a temporary change. Great. Let's get on and add some new words into the vocabulary.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you use the word shift because you sent me an article that I want to reference in here and give him credit. The Future of Event Tech, Ken Madden, the SVP of Digital Engagement from George P. Johnson Experience Marketing, wrote it. And I absolutely love it. And Ron, I thank you for sending it to me because I've seen a lot of articles coming out the last couple of days with what people are going to be looking for next year. And I did see an interesting quote. I don't know if you saw this, Ron, about people thinking that employers are going to start looking for people who can run hybrid events when they're not. They're going to be looking for people who can run remote teams. Julia Solaris, check him out on LinkedIn. I caught that on his LinkedIn. It was a snippet from a podcast he was on earlier this year. And in this article by Ken Madden, he just talks about what the future of event tech looks like. And he references a lot of COVID in 2020 and 2021 because the focus was on digital and getting it out there so you could somehow recoup, obviously, those funds and those audiences that you may have lost because of COVID. But he uses the word shift, which I love. I think that could be a great synonym, if you will, or alternative to pivot, because you are shifting. You're shifting your mindset, your thinking, maybe your teams and your resources. You're shifting those to cover those bases you need to include digital or a different experience. So I love that you use that word. He uses it. I think that could be a great replacement for people using pivot.
Yeah, and I'm to that article, the point that made it stick out is it's again, it gets into this whole thought of taking away the terminology of virtual, in person. There are events. Okay, let's. I mean, bottom line, there are events. Yes, there are different spaces or areas or physical planes or non-physical planes where these things happen. But it really, and I think this may have been on your not good word list, but experience. That's really what it's about, though. It is really about a user or person experience. That is what events are about. You're trying to generate a feeling or whatever, get them interested in something. And that's what these events are about. Education, knowledge share. We've got to stop looking at them from a view of where they're taking place. We're going to get to a point where space isn't going to matter as much. There's work to be done, but I think we're going to get there, and we need to start, as an industry, it needs to start shifting in that direction of thinking beyond where something is happening.
Yeah. So that's a good segue into my next word, which experience isn't on my list, but virtual is. And this is going to sound like a contradiction because we both came from virtual backgrounds. We're still in them in some regard. But virtual to me sounds old and outdated because it is. I mean, we were saying virtual events when they first started, and that was what, like 2006, 2007, a long time ago. And like you're saying, to me, it doesn't matter where my audience is coming from, where they're watching from, because I'm still thinking of the experience in my head. I'm not thinking of whether or not you're in front of a computer screen or you're in person, because I don't want to compare those two. We did a parallel events, segment where we talked about share, not compare, because if you're creating these two different experiences, all you're ever going to get is feedback that was, my experience was less than. And that, I mean, we're probably never going to get away from that. We're always going to have that in some regard. But like you're saying, you're creating an experience, I don't want to base it on where people are anymore. Granted, yes, so you're going to have some limitations. Yeah, of course you are. But at the same time, you don't want your audience going in, maybe a digital audience, thinking that there are limitations already because they're not in the room or they're not there. So I would love for virtual to somehow go away. I know virtual and digital kind of obviously the same thing, but I just feel like that word is just completely outdated.
So I almost feel with the rise of actual virtual reality that it's kind of a misnomer now. Like there's going to be a time when, at least I believe there will be a time when you will actually see real virtual events where you are in the meta space, one of the meta spaces that is being built up now. That would be a true virtual event to me. Like, now that's why I always have that thing where I try to say digital versus virtual, because it is a digital experience. It is online, it's in space. Virtual just doesn't, with the adoption of virtual reality, where it really coming into play now, it doesn't feel right to say it's virtual. And that always drove people to do these corny 3D backgrounds. I'm sorry if you're one of the people that did those. I can't stand them. It was cool for a minute when it first was the thing. But reality, when you're looking on a computer, you're not going to trick someone to thinking they're really there by putting in three bits.
Right.
It just doesn't
Right.
happen. But
Yeah.
really, to one of the bigger things that you were saying there, Leslie, and I think kind of alluding to in here, is it's about the user.
Hmm.
So, and it's also, when we did the parallel event, it was you're customizing it. And this is really the road, I think, that the inroads that we need to make progress on is it's customizing to each individual attendee, each individual user, creating a unique experience for them.
Hmm.
Um, and with the amount of data that's out there now, this isn't so far-fetched, I think, as it would have been 10 years ago.
Right.
Really starting to look and compose and build our events and the experiences around what the users are looking for versus what we think. There's enough data now that we've been able to collect that you can start building these out, saying, okay, each person, this is kind of how you want to structure or what you want to offer to them.
Hmm.
It's probably going to be a little bit of time to get there, but I really do think, like, for the industry to really keep growing and be successful, that's the way you have to go. People are getting so used to, with everything they do, it's catered experiences. Like, even now,
Right.
when I go on and log into my Netflix, what I see, you could log into your Netflix and you're going to see something completely different because it's
Hmm.
a catered experience to me based on data that I've given them, based on how I interact. It's the
Yeah.
same thing we should be doing with our events, is looking to start structuring them that way and creating these unique experiences for people.
Yeah. Well, and you're going into something that we talked about, which we'll bounce back here and there, because we also are talking about what we want to see in 2023 and what kind of needs to go away. And when you're talking about customizing those, kind of like a Netflix situation, I don't understand, and any planner can tell me this if they want to, because I will fully admit I haven't been in the planning space for, let's say, 2 years, on the education side. But ever since, COVID was lifted, we are able to go everywhere. I don't understand the need to make more sessions and everything bigger, because that's not customizing it to anything. You're now adding even more options than I had before, and I still can't get to everything. So why? And again, if there's a planner listening, please tell me. I don't understand the need to add even more of this stress and pressure, even to the attendee, to build out this huge agenda that I'm probably not going to be able to meet. Let's say it that way. So I'd like to see that go in 2023. And Ron, like you're saying, customize that more. Give me 5 or 6 sessions in a day that I want to see. Because also, my question here, and I should know this because I also had this background too. I've never understood having sponsors or exhibitors having no time to go to them. I don't get it. And maybe a sponsor out there kind of agrees with me. I don't know. Or maybe I'm striking a chord that's not a great one, but I don't get it. And even in past events that I worked into, obviously, yes, there was hardly any time to go there. So why are we also not adding that in as a bigger benefit for sponsors and exhibitors too, that now our agenda is kind of cut down, and there's more time to spend with you, and
Mm.
also giving that motivation to them to go beyond selling, which a lot of sponsors do now. They do have these experiences and it's way beyond just selling to you. But giving them more of that benefit to actually participate in these events. That's one thing I want to see go away, is these bigger, huge agendas that no one can make happen.
Yeah, I think to the point there, part of what this was, and I think you probably remember me going on about this earlier, or really last year, earlier this year, where there was going to be an overcorrection. And I really think
Mhm.
that's part of what you're seeing there, is that overcorrection where everybody just thought, now it's over. Now we've got to go really big to get everybody back.
Yeah.
And I think there was likely some disappointment with that. I mean, the few opportunities I had to get out to some of these things, it was still under scale. People were planning bigger, but people weren't coming back at the same levels that were
Hmm.
anticipated.
Hmm.
Yes, they are coming back, but they're also expecting a different, again, here's my word, they're expecting a different experience again when they
Right.
come back, because they've had an opportunity to see some of these online experiences. They know in person what they like as well. So it's got to get to a point where we're again, it's really about not worrying about the volume or number. It's getting a
Mhm.
quality content that meets the needs of the individual attendees or users that are there.
Yeah.
So I think that needs to be kind of a focus as they're moving in. And I know this one was definitely on the list of naughty words was networking.
Ugh, it is. And again, if anybody wants to counter with me on that, that's fine. Yes. And maybe the reason it's on the list is because it's used everywhere, kind
Mhm.
of like pivot. And to me, networking is just, how do I put this? You know what? I'm going to give a personal experiences. I'm not going to use names because I don't want to. I recently have got a lot of requests to network. Okay, great. Here's my thing. And I think I said this before. I want to know what you want to talk to me about. It's not that I don't want to make new friends or new connections, but I want to know what the goal is of us talking. Because if it's really just to get me to promote your product or your business, that's not really a connection to me or a network. Because you basically just sold to me in that networking call. Didn't really ask me about a lot about what I do or how I would even promote. That's that's not networking to me. Don't invite me on a network or a networking session. That's not what that is. That's basically you talking at me and selling to me. So I think it's being used in a lot of situations that it is not technically networking. I think that's why I hate it.
Yeah.
Um, I also, and you can tell me if you think this too, I don't like the idea. I never have, as long as I've been in conferences, of just going into a room, getting a drink and talking to strangers. Anybody else who that's your thing, good for you. It's not my thing. And that doesn't entice me to go. If you call it like a networking session or a networking hour, that doesn't motivate me to go. I guess I need specific motivations to go do something like that. And using the word networking doesn't give me motivation. What about you?
For me, I understand the purpose of what it is when at least from an events perspective, when networking gets added in. Here's my
Mm-hmm.
problem. At least from the digital space, which is where I'm more comfortable speaking. In person, I can't grow as much there, but
Yeah.
from a digital perspective, we have people out there that continually go back through ideas that have been used and they
Mm-hmm.
recycle them and
Mm-hmm.
recycle. At this point, they're recycling shit. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, if they want to be successful in the digital space with some form of networking, somebody's got to break the mold and get out there and come up with something that's different. Find
Mm-hmm.
different ways to actually help connect people. I think we saw a little bit of innovation during the pandemic, but I think they've all kind of jumped back now because everybody's spent their focus back towards what
Yep.
happens at the physical events versus what's happening digital. But we're going to end up in situations again. It's
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic was just one instance, but there's worldwide, there's always going to be things that are happening. There will be natural disasters, wars, whatever.
Yeah.
There's going to be things that restrict people from moving as freely as they would like. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
look through history, it happens. We need to become more innovative and stop recycling shit. Like get
Yeah.
people together, get forums happening to really discuss what are the different ways that we can help people connect, because that's really, it's connections. That's really
Mm-hmm.
what you want to do. Networking, yes, great. It's really about connecting people, getting them to discuss ideas, whatever, transfer of information.
Yeah.
um and it's finding new ways to do that, but ways that
Mm-hmm.
actually resonate with the people. I've seen people that have tried passing off chat rooms as like a new fantabulous idea.
Yeah. Nope.
When no, that really doesn't work. You will have some people that will interact, but you also have to consider people, how they like to communicate. It can be different. Some people like to speak, some people don't mind text, but you've got to find the right forums for it. There's some platforms
Mm-hmm.
that have gotten a little bit more organized where you can do something like a video chat or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think the biggest point is putting purpose behind it. And I think that's what you
Mm-hmm.
were saying
Oh,
is,
I was just gonna say purpose. I was just thinking that in my head.
see. Pretty much. It's putting the purpose behind why you're there, what you're doing. If it's just great, have a drink, be social, then that, to your point, that's not really networking. That's having a drink and
Right.
being social. Uh,
Hmm.
Forming connections involves a little bit deeper. You might start at that drink, having having the conversation. It might spawn onto bigger conversations, which I think is most of the time what the hope is there.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's just making sure, I think one of the things we've both seen a lot of over the years, in especially in digital space, is that people will add these components in with no real purpose, and
Hmm.
they'll just
Hmm.
throw it out there, and that's it. It's kind of like, oh, by the way, here we have these networking times, but they don't really put anything around it. They don't put a purpose or goal for people. It's just they throw the times, and it's
Right.
most of the time at the end of the day when people are done, and then they're surprised that people don't show up. It's like, well, you dumped it at the end of the day. People are just going to be like, I don't need to do that.
Well, especially if they know it's just a chat or something.
Right.
Okay. When there's no topic, no moderator, no nothing. And I think we've talked about it before, and I will say it again. I realize it's the easiest thing to talk about. I hate when people talk about the weather. I don't care to see lines of chat of what everybody's temperature is. Don't
Right.
care. And I think if you're going to do something like that, use a different word than networking. Put a moderator or a topic in there, because if I know what we're going to be talking about, if it's something that I'm not into, I'll skip it. But if I am, I will completely go and be involved and, like you're saying, have a purpose, because I know that it's a certain topic. It's not just people being like, what session did you watch? What's the weather like in Arizona? Just
Right.
it's going to have more depth to it. And again, if you keep having these open-ended kind of experiences planned, you're going to get feedback that there was no point to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the other thing that you mentioned that just kind of came through as you're talking again, that you were talking about, is cramming so many sessions. And I
Yeah.
think this is a problem. It doesn't matter which space the event is happening in, is people cramming sessions into like a finite amount of time. You have, X amount of days with X amount of number of hours.
Hmm.
And a lot of the time you are having your people, and I've seen this both in person and in the digital space, where you're back to back to back to back to back, and you're not
Yeah.
giving people a real break to do anything. So like you said, from the sponsors, like, when people are in booths and stuff like that, they sometimes put it, but it's like once, like you have like one
Hmm.
block or two blocks during this time where it's really dedicated for people to go there. Provide a little bit more value, let them go explore, but also give time for people to decompress after a session.
Yeah.
They're bringing in a lot of data, but they might not actually take away as much as you think, because
Hmm.
there's no time for them to kind of decompress afterwards and absorb it. Or if you want to add this whole like networking in, great, from a session, go into a space where you have like just a free talk area where the people can go and have conversations. It's providing more value.
Yeah.
Stop trying to provide so many sessions and start looking at, really, again, like I said, quality. Quality is really
Hmm.
what it is, making sure you're providing the most value. Number is not going to get you there, because I've seen ones
No.
where they fill in and add these sessions that haven't been vetted as good as they should have been,
Yeah.
and they fall flat.
That's completely it. And I mean, I'll say, just coming from my experience, I feel for education teams and creative teams out there, because if you are constantly putting all these sessions into one event, I don't know how much more creative you can get with your topics, because if you already have so many sessions, I don't understand how you can keep creating them and have them be new or interesting to people. I think that's right now, I think that has to be the biggest big ticket pressure item for education managers or directors. And I do feel for them in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, from an education standpoint, that's really where you got to figure out, okay, what, a lot of the times when it's from education, you're trying to get your professional credits that you need to get when you go to
Hmm.
these. Figure out what is needed the most. A lot of times they kind of just carpet bomb with a bunch of things like,
Yeah.
here's everything, but maybe taking more time up front to pull audience of which ones are the most important. Are there certain ones that are required of everybody that you need to have, then kind of sprinkle in some of the other luxury ones that can be added in
Hmm.
there.
Yeah.
that way. And but I think for the education teams, there's probably a lot of pressure coming down because a lot of it gets put on them. Like, well, the sessions really need to be on you because a majority of them are supposed to be educational, at least from my understanding. That these are that's where a lot of the pressure goes, is for them to do that. So they're
Mhm.
just adding everything and anything that seems like, oh, well, that's a reasonable topic.
Yeah, well, and then I feel like it's a little confusing for your speakers too, because you come at them with this topic and sometimes it's not exactly specific. Because I'll be honest, from my experience, you get kind of general when you're getting down to the bottom of the barrel of that you
Right.
have to fill these. And then they possibly deliver something that wasn't on topic. And then your audience is wondering what the hell happened. So it's just, I think it creates pressure all around. And at the end of the day, it's not exactly a satisfying attendee experience.
Yeah.
So maybe scale back, like a different, I think one thing that you and I talked about that I don't think there was enough focus on in 2022 is what we learned from altering our events. I don't think that's still a focus. I think the focus is still getting back to normal, which poses my question. If we're just getting back to normal, why does it have to be bigger and better? If you're just getting back to normal.
Yeah.
I
Touche.
Yeah, I don't understand. So I think there was just so much focus on getting back, which is great. People wanted to get back. No one saw each other for a year. I completely understand. But I don't really think we learned enough about new opportunities that came through from having to shift or alter. And I think we need to get back to that to see what and listen more to your attendees. I mean, that
Right.
feedback is like gold right now. And like you're saying, if they want more customization, if they're telling you how they want it customized, really dig into that. Because that's, I think, why, reinvent the wheel if you've got somebody telling you exactly what they want to see. Is it always possible? No. But look into those opportunities, those resources you have, and you could probably start from there.
Yeah, it's to your point, adjusting with the times.
Mhm.
Everybody, there was that absolute rush to get back and do in person bigger and better than before. Um, and really what they lost, there was an opportunity to expand to more audience. And it's funny to watch this because everybody just shifted back to the people. You have maybe 10,000, let's just say 10,000 people that will go to your physical space event.
Mhm.
You're limited to that because of actual space capacity issues. When they
Right.
went and they realized all of a sudden they were getting a lot more people when they were doing these from a digital space.
Mhm.
So why get
Mhm.
rid of that? I never understood the logic behind this. Yes, it takes work. Yes, you have to build teams about it. But you were just starting to get the experience with those teams. You were
Right.
starting to build them up. They were starting to learn after the year and a half or so of not doing the physical of how to do these better.
Mhm.
And then this year, it just to me it looked like it imploded in. It just came less and less. People were
Yeah.
still doing them, but it became less of a focus again. It was always about these 10,000 people. I get it. You can charge more for it to have them go there,
Mhm.
but you're also probably paying more as well. And you
Yep.
reduce the size of your message. That's to me, it makes absolutely no sense. If there's somebody out there that wants to explain this to me, great. I'm willing to listen. But to me,
Mhm.
it does not make any sense to reduce the size of your audience. Like,
Yeah.
get out there, maximize the spread of your message as much as you can. Yes, there's additional costs, but you're going from 10,000 to an unlimited capacity depending on platform, et cetera, et cetera. But you double, triple, quadruple, whatever, you're going to have a lot larger amount of people that are able to join and be a part of your community or are part of your community that may not be able to travel. So why cut
Mhm.
it back?
Yeah.
I think that was a huge frustration for me this year is to watch people do that. I'm like, but why? What is the real? Is there an actual legitimate reason why you went that way?
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, that's an interesting point because I feel like there's still some thought process or some focus around you have the digital to create FOMO for the in-person. No, not anymore. And I'm going to sound like a big hermit, and it's not how I am at all, but I, I don't, I don't get FOMO when you're streaming the opening reception performance. I don't care. Like, I
Right.
mean, does it look cool? Yeah, great. But it doesn't make me be like, oh, I really have to go next year. And I think that's, and that worked in the past years. Yes, it created FOMO for people and they came maybe, let's say, the next year. But I just think still having that mindset also needs to go, because it should now be, like you're saying, the focus on your audience, increasing it, and getting those existing audience members and getting new ones, because they have this new opportunity to kind of check you out, kind of join you digitally. And if they like you, or if they're into your brand and it's interesting, then they'll start to focus on the other ways they can connect with you. But yeah, I think it's all about shifting. Whether or not that happens, I don't know.
I think it's going to happen, or people will eventually make themselves obsolete.
Hmm.
Technology is going to start changing even faster.
Yeah.
We're at a point where we are, I think, getting close to the next technology hump where things are going to go really fast. Like we've been climbing up a
Hmm.
hill and now we're getting ready to go down the downslope, and it's going to go fast.
Yeah.
We're going to see things probably within the next 10 to 15 years that end up like supersonic speed moving, and either they move forward and start doing this now. The people that get out in front of this, they're going
Hmm.
to be the leaders in this. They're going to be the ones driving the traffic, and there are people out there that are pushing forward with new concepts and ideas, and those are the ones that they're going to be the leads in a few years
Yeah.
when this really starts to pick up. Um, but it's with any industry. Like you, when you start getting stuck in, well, this is how we've always done it, this is what we do,
Yeah.
you are gone to the seven winds
Hmm.
goodbye.
Yeah. What's one thing you would like to see people focus on or do in 2023?
I would love to see them take more focus, like I said before, I think we covered this earlier, is really start focusing on the user-centric experience. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
start looking at how we can cater more specifically to an individual person versus collective dump of everything. Like really start
Yeah.
honing that in. I know it
Hmm.
won't get there overnight, but the people that start with this now have the better idea. Start looking at how websites and other places build these experiences, like the Netflix. How did
Yeah.
they do it? What did they start doing? And start taking that same experience and moving it into event technology, not just saying for the online or digital events, but also for the physical events as well.
Hmm.
Take those same things, because as you're doing your planning, you start creating where people can start selecting. Because that's
Yep.
initially what's happened. They're going to have to make choices to collect more data. I'm sure there is existing data out there on these users, but to get it populated, start building it and let people start selecting and go from there as to how you create these schedules or whatever for people to move through. How about
Yeah.
you? What's your 2023 big wish?
I like that. Mine is along the same lines as that. I would love to see people do more crowdsourcing. I feel like we talked about getting bigger and better, and we have to really dig to get creative about these topics. But I'd like to see people do more crowdsourcing ahead of time, where you don't have to do, I mean, this sounds lazy. You don't have to do so much of the legwork. Um, Literally just taking those crowdsourcing or those ideas from your attendees, it's going to kill two birds with one stone. You're going to make it easier on yourself and your education team and your speakers. And then you're also giving them that customized experience those attendees are looking for. This is also a pie in the sky idea. And I'm sure a lot of planners would be like, there's no way in hell that would ever work. But survey them during. I would love to see somebody that would survey them during, not after. And here's my pie in the sky idea: have some backup sessions ready to go that speakers could present virtually. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to survey you. And if I'm like, so far, what have you thought about these topics? And you're like, I didn't like any of them. Okay, what would you like to see? And I can usually have an idea. If I know my audience, I have an idea of what they're looking to see. Have that in your back pocket as, oh, well, Ron's going to present that tomorrow virtually, because then you don't have to worry about that speaker being there on site to do it. And it kind of just throws, I mean, it throws a curveball, but kind of a good one, because now I'm thinking you were like, you surveyed me during, I told you I wasn't satisfied, and now you're going to do everything to make sure that I am. While I don't know if anybody would like to contact me to talk about this, that'd be great, because I don't actually have a plan. That was just an idea. But I think that would be so cool to be thinking of them constantly, not just after the fact. And then I can't really fix your dissatisfaction after that.
I think that is a very, very interesting idea. And I think we've put a lot of
It's a
work.
lofty goal, I'm
We
aware.
put a lot of work forward for people for 2023. So we'll see if they disappoint us.
Yeah. So good luck with that one.
Yes.
But that's like I said, I don't have a plan for that. I don't consult on that. That was literally just something I thought of that could maybe be a possibility, but you'd have to be very creative and have very let's say ready speakers for that, which I'm sure a lot of people do.
Yeah, I've got plenty of ideas. I just need the smarter brains that know how to execute them.
Yeah. People need to execute. I'll give you the idea, but you have to do it. Yeah.
All right, Leslie. Well, I think that is going to wrap us up for 2022.
Yes. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope everybody listening to this is on some sort of vacation, even if you're at home. I know a lot more people this year did decide to take off for the holidays, which I'm so glad to hear because everybody needs to just recharge and kind of take that time because if they don't, there's no creative events next year.
Yeah. Well, it has been a fabulous year and a fabulous first season for us on this. We will be back with more. And for the children's fund that we're doing for charity, we are just around $500. So I'm going to wait and see where we end up after about a week of this airing, and then I'll send the final check over.
That is great. Thank you so much for everybody who liked, downloaded. That's so great that we can also give back because that's also something we should be doing every year. And I know a lot of people do that with their events. So thank you, Ron, so much for doing that.
All right. Well, have a great new year, everyone, and we'll see you in 2023.
All right. Bye, everybody.